Australia, a global trend is emerging with several countries and regional bodies proposing or implementing legislation to impose stricter age limits and enforce robust age verification on social media platforms, with a view to banning social media platforms in Australia, starting with Australia, for under 16s. This is a big move, isn't it? Igniting three primary controversies, and I wanted to just get your view on that. The first is, the significant constitutional challenge. Some people say it's violating young Australians' implied right to freedom of political communication. The second one, which I want to talk to Igor about, is the technical feasibility of this. And finally, the ban is being criticised for its inadequate and misplaced policy response to online harm, with people and particularly children's welfare groups arguing that the focus should be on compelling platforms to remove harmful content, not to remove teenagers from platforms. So just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a really nice summary. So this law is the Online Safety Amendment 2024. So it has been passed. It is the law. Why are we talking about it now is because it's coming into effect on the 10th of December. So everybody has had this sort of year-long process to get ready and get their teens off the platform. Lots and lots to say about this. I think that the actual core mandate is that social media platforms must take, quotes, reasonable steps, so they don't have to be perfect, to prevent children under 16 from holding accounts. So that to me immediately suggests that a child can sit with their parent or carer or an over 16 and look at social media, but they can't be account holders. So in terms of mechanics, it has a list of the applicable platforms. That's always as a policy.
I have a lot to say about this.
Yes,
and there is a lot to say.
We're going to get to you on this last, but we're storing up the fuming in the background. Emily, excessive and lazy government measures?
I think it depends on where you're sitting there. I think if you speak to most parents about their children's use of social media and the impact of social media, they're probably worried in some degree, and there is a role for government to have a kind of counterbalancing influence and power on behalf of the taxpayer and citizen in the face of huge corporate power. So something needs to be done. Whether this is the something, I don't know.
Igor, is this technically feasible? I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was 16, I don't think any grown-ups had a clue about what I was doing.
No, and well, and also we didn't have social media, right? Like when I'm 33, so like when I was 16, we had like a little bit of social media, but not in the way that it's structured right now. Social media was something, I think, was something that you had outside the real life. And now I think social media makes a big part of their real life, of the teenagers.
So, and young people in general, and when I say young people, I mean anyone over 60, is now really living their whole life through
social media. Yes.
Yeah. Alice, I'm going to wind you up just in the interest of balance. I'm not asking you whether you support or oppose the initiative. We're trying to look at both sides. Is the internet a nice place for under 16-year-olds?
That's a interesting question, because nice place, it's sort of like, is the world a nice place for under 16-year-olds? Not really. And I think the online world is the real world now. I've got two big things to say about the topic of the Australian social media ban. The first one is about generational fragmentation and the online fragmentation we see between generations. And the second is about children's rights. So the first point, because you were talking about, the list of sites that they're choosing to ban, which I think reveals a lot about, how divided generations are, because the people who are making this ban are not children. And the list they've come up with, so there's a thing now of, we used to think of everything as social media, but there's actually content media with a social media element. there is social media, and then there is instant messaging.
So are games and gaming communities on the banned list, or is it that the politicians just don't
Interesting
understand?
question. So YouTube is being banned because children access harmful content on YouTube. I would say the social media element of YouTube is very much a secondary thing through comments and messages, but it's a video platform. Roblox is not being banned. And Roblox has got a big, secondary social media component as well. And there's a lot of very, very harmful content out there. And to me, it feels like this list has been put together by a bunch of adults who are just very like, that one's spooky, oh, that, careful of that, there's bad stuff on that one. They haven't really thought this through.
So excessive and lazy.
Yeah, scattergun, lazy, not really thinking about what a social media is, what it's used for.
So wouldn't it be more honest? Because obviously there's just going to be lots of fighting, like YouTube arguing, and probably successfully in court, that Roblox is the same. Well, and so let's ban everything.
Yeah, Roblox, they have made a big change directly in response to this law of trying to stop children and adults from talking on their platform. But what I think this is really interesting, it's interesting about children's rights. Because when I was a speech and language therapist, I worked with adults with learning disabilities and brain injuries. So rights, the fighting for the rights of adults with learning disabilities was a massive issue. And I remember while I was working in the NHS, there was a big case of an adult with a learning disability whose phone had been taken away from her to stop her from accessing harmful content. And it was found that that was unethical and that what they should have done is put in place a deprivation of liberty safeguards, which is a very, very high-level piece of law designed to protect someone. Like if you lose your mental capacity or if you're sectioned, for example, you can receive medical support against your will, right? So the taking away of her phone, and by doing so, taking away her access to the internet, was deemed a violation of her human rights. And
I'm feeling wound up. I'm now feeling strange. This is not Christmassy, Australia. You've given us something to really feel concerned about, and where Australia is going with this, Malaysia, Denmark, Norway, New Zealand.
The EU are now trying to pass the same thing.
What's happening here?
Well, I think I look to Australia. If you want to know what other countries are going to be doing next or thinking about next in terms of digital regulation, look at Australia and look at the EU, because they are very active. And I still keep coming back to the argument that it's not okay to just let technology run and then try and pick up the pieces 10 years later when you've got a whole generation that have grown up in a very dangerous environment. So I'm starting with that. I want to pick up Alice's point about the impact on freedom, because there is a legal challenge being mounted by two teenagers supported by a civil society organisation, the Digital Freedom Project, and their argument is actually hinges on implied freedom of political communication. In other words, they're saying taking us off this platform prevents us from maturing as democratic citizens and participants in democracy. So it is disenfranchising us from civic engagement. A very creative legal argument.
And these are children goes to your point. Were born with the internet in place. You're just unplugging them literally from what they've known their whole lives. I just have one final point, which is it should be education, not abstinence, because when has abstinence ever worked as an approach to protecting young people from anything?
That was my point I was going to say to Igor. Let's think about this. We're 16 again. They're banning drugs, so we go underground. What's a 16-year-old going to do? Because let's talk about reality here. What actually is a 16-year-old going to do?
I also agree what Emily was saying, like social media needs to have an overview and needs some policy to be there for teenagers. But I don't think the ban is like the right choice, because if you come to a teenager and you say, you cannot use this, that's the first thing that they want to do it. And reinforcing what I said, like just make the parents use the the social media.
Get
It's not
them
gonna
on
be cool
Roblox.
anymore. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be there. My mom is liking me. That's how they moved everyone from Instagram. You know, like when your mom, your grandmother is there, you're just not gonna
Thank
be
you
there
very
anymore.
much. This reminds me of the shopping mall where they wanted to get rid of teenagers from shopping malls, so they just play cheesy music, and it's just not
Make it
cool
uncool.
to hang around there. So we've had enough fun with that. Goodness me, that I think that's going to roll and roll as we watch that disaster kind of play.